Good morning. My name is Sujit Jagirdar. I am the Chief Innovation Officer at T-Hub. T-Hub is one of the world's largest innovation hub for startups and entrepreneurs. In fact, today we have a very interesting podcast topic on manufacturing transformations and trends. We are looking at discussing latest trends, technologies that are impacting manufacturing space, and also discuss Reckitt, which is one of the global leaders in the manufacturing space, how they are transforming. Yes, we have a very distinguished and accomplished guest amidst us. I'm very glad to introduce to you Shashank Paithnakar, who is the IT&D Product Director at Reckitt. So, Shashank, very warm welcome to this podcast. Thank you for taking your time. In fact, we would like to understand a little bit more about Reckitt and also about your background as well. If you can take a moment to introduce both the organization and yourself, I'll be very happy.
Well, thanks Sujit, and thanks for inviting me on this interesting podcast. So Reckitt is almost a 200-year-old company, the FMCG company, and we operate in three verticals: health, hygiene, and nutrition. And probably a lot of the day-to-day brands that you see, like a Dettol, Lysol, these are some of our power brands. So quite a wide range of the product that we operate in. Particularly in my background, probably I've been with the Reckitt since the past little over the 4 years. I am working with the Reckitt as a IT&D Product Director for manufacturing. And this is a kind of a global role. I take care of all three, doing the IT and digital solution for manufacturing across three business verticals within the Reckitt.
Fantastic. Thanks for that quick, neat introduction. So let's quickly dive into the conversation, especially in the manufacturing space. In fact, it is always said, Shashank, that while the services industry has gone ahead, much far ahead in terms of digital transformations, all of that, manufacturing had been little left behind, right? But I know that Reckitt has been focusing a lot on product transformation, product innovation as well. Can you talk a little more about what kind of manufacturing and digital transformations have been happening at Reckitt, and what are the new things that you've been doing, of late?
This is quite an interesting space. So probably, as you could imagine, Reckitt being the FMCG company, the product evolved quite fast. And so probably if you think transformation in this space is kind of, can be broadly put in two buckets. The one bucket is purely around the resilience. That means, you're more concerned about your ability to operate as a business and protecting your net revenue. And it really means your ability to kind of safeguard your manufacturing business from the cyber attacks, your major disruptions that could happen. So that's a kind of a transformational bucket. The second is more around the product innovation, because one of the biggest competition that we face as a business is from the private labels. So we, as a company, we innovate quite a lot in terms of building up the future roadmaps of the power brands and innovation. So quite a few examples in that space. So probably I'll pick one, the dishwasher tablet, the Finish. Solid product, and in the recent past few years we have gone past and done the transformation in that space to come up with a product which is kind of a thermoforming, and that's how we kind of innovate in this space, creating premiumization, that we are, rather than competing with the private labels and going down on the price trajectory. The focus is in terms of how do you bring the premium, good quality product to the consumers.
Wonderful. Let's speak a little bit on the resiliency part, right? The resilience that you spoke of. What exactly do you mean by resilience? I mean, is it the vagaries of competition that has to, or that forces an organization like you to be resilient, or are those internal challenges that really put focus on resilience? And how do you build resilience?
It's quite a complicated topic, right? Because when you kind of look around, start dealing with the lot of these consulting firms who give advices on the resilience, you see there is operational resilience. There's a resilience around the systems. There is a resilience around processes. These resilience pieces kind of should be articulated in our opinion, or at least in my opinion. is your ability of a business to kind of respond to a kind of a major disruption. Okay, so today, if you think the largest risk to the enterprises today is cyber. The assets are more and more connected. The more modernization that you see in the product space, it is kind of a backed up by the equivalent innovation in the factory. The more modern machinery, more connected ecosystem. So the cyber is a genuinely big threat. So from that sense, probably when you put up a resilience type of a program, the construct has to be your ability to kind of identify, protect, the detect, and the recover within the manufacturing space, and that's how kind of that's a base foundation. And then you kind of see what do I need to do if I had to kind of protect my asset. What do I need to do in terms of recovery of my asset? And then you kind of put together a kind of a multi-year program. How I take these approach and take it across the all my factories to make them more resilient.
So coming back to the manufacturing innovation, right, and transformation itself, right, over the last few years, there have been a lot of this trend to Industry 4.0 and various other technologies that have come into, so application, right, on the shop floor. So can you throw a little bit light on what's happening in the shop floor, at your end? So have you adopted some of these technologies, and to what level? If you can share some info.
Correct. I think that's again a very interesting topic of a conversation, because if you think our businesses, the three different verticals, so that means are these businesses in a health and hygiene or too different than nutrition? Probably answer would be no. So some of these elements are going to be extremely foundational in nature. That means your ability to kind of identify how those machines are performing. Do you have unplanned downtimes? Now these kind of are very foundational, fundamental. Some elements are always going to be a kind of product specific, business specific. For example, if I pick up example of our health business, in health business probably our focus would be around how do I deliver the consistent quality of the product, and can I be predictive about it. In that sense, your ability to kind of make sure that as the material moves through the process in a manufacturing, you have a kind of a tighter control of how these goods are manufactured at a different stages. Do you have the right measurements in place, and can you consolidate them very quickly so that the review can happen, and you can be very confident that the product that gets released, even for the quality testing, is of a good quality, of a consistent performance.
And you did also touch upon the product innovation. You did quote a couple of examples, right? Now, how does that, there is a whole designing of this products, new product development that happens, and there is an prototyping possibly that happens, and manufacturing comes into picture, and then the actual product evolution takes place, and from idea stage it is goes to the market, so to say, right? So how important is the manufacturing? What's the role of the manufacturing in this whole product evolution journey, especially the new product evolution journey?
Yep. So I think it's a typical product life cycle, right? So you start off with the idea saying that the product I have, it need to be solving some additional problem, or maybe a new manufacturing form, formulation form. So when you start off, it goes through a series of steps. So you start kind of doing the initial the designs, which can be purely in the paper. It goes into the pilot plants where you kind of see the product that you're producing. Is it of a commercial grade? Is it viable for a commercial manufacturing to be doing? And then it connects into the manufacturing. So it kind of forms a whole scale. Now the downstream of all of these products are your manufacturing factories.
Correct.
If your manufacturing is not capable of producing these products, then probably it's a pointless. And that's where you kind of use a good judgment around the product that you're now making sure are going to be there and out there in the market. Do you have an end-to-end program in terms of having the product pass through the different stages, and whether the manufacturing is suitable, if facilities are suitable, if they're not suitable, what do you need to do? So it kind of lay out the full program and then make sure that the product passes through. And then I think the digital has a big role to play in this area, because all these comparisons that you make, a lot of the work is a kind of a purely paper based, and that's where the digital comes into play, making sure you have a seamless transition of a product from R&D into manufacturing.
So let me put you on a bit of a spot. So I'm sure there were challenges. So as you transition into different phases of this evolution, right? So what has been your biggest challenge, or what have been those challenges that you had to overcome? When I say you, obviously Reckitt had to overcome, and then what were the learnings? What were the key takeaways?
So I think again great question, Sujit, and probably I would kind of take a step back. When we say I'm doing a transformation in a manufacturing space, why am I doing? So to kind of align the business construct of all of this, the performances of manufacturing are measured on a commercial performance. Cost of goods, cost of conversions, how are your gross margins? These parameters in matrices are not kind of linked directly to one or the other, because while you have the manufacturing at the forefront, you have the quality, you have procurement, you have an end-to-end supply chain. All of these contributes, and then you kind of get the end outcome.
Sure.
So COGS or the gross margin, these are kind of an end outcome. But what contributes to it is a series of factors. So when you put together these kind of a productivity improvement program, you kind of be mindful and choiceful. Where are you putting your resources? And that becomes a bigger problem. Your finite resources, how they get scheduled, is a first problem. And second is, even in terms of when you are kind of deploying these solutions, you're going to do some pilot before you scale. Which factory you pick, or which market you choose to do. That's also kind of you have to be very choiceful. So I think in general, the program of these kind of a complexity, where you're saying, I'm going to drive productivity improvement, 1 year this much, second year another percent improvement. Designing this program itself is a kind of a very difficult chart, and then that is something that you cannot outsource. You have to internalize. You have to have the skilled people working on it, have a right type of a governances to make sure that these programs are delivered at a scale.
Now, how important is data? Manufacturing, we know there's so much of data that gets generated. Are you using the power of data through data analytics, or this whole, now the paradigm is shifting, through the new technologies that are coming up. So what's the role of data in your manufacturing setup?
I think the data, you cannot survive the business without your data.
Sure.
Essentially, we are in the business, when you say we are in the business of manufacturing, you are actually in the business of servicing the market. If the market doesn't get a product which they are looking for, that means you're creating a need, but you're not fulfilling that need. You're actually leaving out that space for a competition. Now, all of that, the service level, if you have to manage, it's kind of a backward journey. You start from a service level, how are the performances, then what are the factory performances. So essentially, everything is essentially data. So that's a kind of top layer of a digitization and data, where you think, is my factory performing, is my supply chain performing to optimum, that I'm able to service the market with the service level that are expected. Rolling back into core manufacturing, it's a kind of one level deeper down, and that's where the probably the complexity is, because historically the manufacturing is not only the manufacturing, but it's also to do with the quality and the safety, and that's where probably that's where the step change are very difficult, because it is to do with your product registration, it's to do with your regulatory submissions. A lot of factor comes into play. So I think that's where probably the top layer has been taken care, and now we are kind of making strides in terms of how do we further use the data to kind of prove that the product that we're manufacturing are safe, and kind of get away a little bit from the end game of a testing.
Right.
And proving the quality in a manufacturing stages itself.
And has it become near real time for you, or you are in the journey as far as data tracking is concerned?
So
on
I
the
think
shop floor, basically. Yeah.
So I think the data tracking is in some areas are always going to be near real time.
Right.
Near real time. Specifically, closer you go to the machine, you're near real time. What you review as part of your daily operations, that need not be near real time. What you report into your SAP systems has to be near real time, but may not be near real time. So it's a kind of a paradigm of a data, that in the manufacturing operations, the need for a data to be real time is very differentiated.
Sure.
So I think probably we have solved this problem to an extent to what is relevant for the today's reality.
Got it.
The aspirations are again looking at tomorrow and how do we cut further non-value added activities from the manufacturing to become much more productive.
I know you also mentioned that you drive innovation projects, etc. So, how are you engaged with entities like T-Hub or innovation ecosystems? Is that something you're seriously looking at? We know we are working together, but at the same time, what's your roadmap for innovation, and especially in the context of entities like T-Hub?
So I think this need to be carefully calibrated. That would be probably my thought, because essentially innovation is need to be owned up internally.
Sure.
That means the ideation that happens to solve today's problem need to be owned up. They need to be channelized internally, and then probably once you have kind of a curated set of a problem, because essentially once you have a problem statement, there has to be value delivery.
Right.
Because this is not about the resilience or the net revenue protection kind of a problem statement. We are talking about a productivity improvement.
Sure.
There has to be value that has to come with that problem statement, and there has to be clear prioritization.
Sure.
So once the companies are kind of a good at doing managing that innovation internally, that's where probably the in my mind the role for the likes of the T-Hub comes in, because the way of solving the problem not necessarily looking at established product. Sometimes you have your own nuances and a niche which demands the innovation. So how quickly T-Hub kind of institution respond to those requirement to solve those problem statement, that's something need to be done appropriately to be able to leverage the potentials of the T-Hub.
Good point. I mean, it's something that value delivery part that you mentioned is key, and how you define what metrics you assign, right, to measure them is going to be key for any such kind of decisions. But one thing, Shashank, what we are seeing more often is this whole concept of open innovation. That's kind of letting manufacturers or the OEMs open the doors for collaboration. I'm sure you're already doing it, but over time, possibly that's one of the paths that you may want to seriously consider, right, taking up. So coming back, while we talked about manufacturing operations, supply chains also play a crucial role, right? You did mention about how do you control quality, and also how do you control availability of raw materials, or how do you ensure availability of finished products. So how key is it in your operations? So the supply chains, and have you seen disruptions? Have you changed the supply chain pathways?
Again, any supply chain professional will have probably the same story. The trigger point for us has been the major disruption that were caused by the COVID.
Right.
A few years ago. Now also today we are seeing the impact of the Ukraine war. And it is a major disruption, the conflicts in the Middle East that are happening. Now these are the events which are majorly disruptive. What it kind of makes it harder for you to kind of able to predict where are your demands for the product. In terms of your ability to forecast accurately what's the true demand for your product, and then adjusting your supply chains around it is a kind of a crucial importance. The another key factor probably I would think is around your procurement, where ability to kind of have the right contracts in place for the right volumes that you need to get the better rates, and having the right payment terms, because the larger corporation, the products are manufactured in the multiple factories, supplied to the multiple markets, the raw material come from multiple sources. If you're able to kind of harmonize this cycle, there is a productivity to be derived. So I think in terms of the end-to-end supply chain, there are multiple opportunities where you have to streamline your processes, your technical platform in order to kind of gain those productivity benefits.
I think that's where the agility part comes into picture, in terms of how agile are the solutions, as well as how agile are the manufacturing entities in switching the game based on the scenarios. Right?
Correct, correct. And in the Reckitt context, we call this as common as possible and as differentiated as needed.
That's interesting.
That's a ACAP and ADAN. I think that's a term that we frequently use at Reckitt. So the market or a process need not be truly differentiated. You are better off having it on a standard platform, run it in a standard way.
Right.
If there is a value to be discovered by being different, then that's where probably you look for differentiation. So I think broadly the focus is on a standardization, the standardization of the processes, the tooling that runs behind it, the center of excellence structure that are supposed to drive those synergies. The focus is predominantly on the standardization and then leaving out a very small niche differentiation out where you have a true value delivery.
Interesting. Interesting. So, what is India's role? I mean, Reckitt India's role in the global scheme of things. I mean, is India playing a more important role? How do you see that today?
So yes, I mean, in terms of the revenue contribution, India is a big market, or other, for that matter, South of Asia is also a significantly large market, and it's a very commercial organization, it's a very evolved organization in terms of having all capabilities of sales, marketing, manufacturing, supply chain. It's a very mature. And I think India organization, in terms of the people capability, there's a significant expertise in some of the categories where the category management also happens out of the India as a location. Similarly, apart from these, the purely product centric and product management, category management, we have a significant presence within Hyderabad in terms of the IT&D capability.
Okay.
Where a lot of large transformation programs are happening out of the global hub office that we have here. So I think super important roles that's been played by us for the overall organization.
Wonderful. So, is innovation part of that as well? I mean, I'm assuming the innovation contributing towards innovation is also part of that, I believe.
Yes, I mean the innovation pathway is again playing crucial role, and I think all of us within the function. So I was when I came here in the morning, I learnt about the R&D use cases which requires innovation, and it was kind of quite a good amount of surprise to see that apart from us within these manufacturing and supply,
Even
other
R&D.
functions are also doing it. So I think innovation happening on a broad scale.
Very nice. So finally, the final question, if you will. I know it's always interesting to talk about the future, right? So what's going to happen, what direction, each of these segments, sectors, technologies take, but more from a manufacturing innovation standpoint, so how do you see the trend evolving very broadly?
Again, probably hard to predict future, but based on the early trends that we see, how the CPGs are shaping, purely looking at competition, looking at what we do, I think the next 5 to 10 years is going to be focused on the personalization of the product or the hyper personalization. That will be one of the key trends that will pick up in the CPG, FMCG space. The key point I could think is that who's your customer. So a lot of millennials and Gen Zs who are coming up, who are your true customer today, they're going to be able to relate to the brand based on the transparency of the brand or the authenticity. That means a lot of these product labels will evolve now to be able to give that a consumer connectivity experience, where customers are interested in knowing where the raw material has come from. Is it from a sustainable sources? So these kind of product-centered innovation would come through at quite a rapid pace than we could imagine. To back that up, probably I think in the technology space, you would see some of the major and the kind of I would think pilot becoming the scale. So that today the AI ML in that space is at least in the quality and safety space is kind of gradually becoming mainstream. So I wouldn't say that the site directors will be replaced by the AI ML. But you would see a lot of enhancement in that space, a lot of productivity gains coming out of the AI/ML. And the third key trend I could keep thinking is in terms of the connected ecosystem, because more modern product, more modern machinery, that means the connected ecosystem, and the cyber, specifically in the OT space, will become much more mainstream than what it is today. So you could expect a lot of consolidation happening for the cyber OT space. A lot of M&As you could expect where the existing suppliers who are in the IT space for the cyber consolidating making solid offering for OT, lot of startups coming in, offering the differentiated capabilities for the MSMBs and for large corporations in this space.
Wonderful. I mean, I'm sure we can go on, Shashank, but somewhere we have to kind of stop. But thank you so much. It was so enlightening and it was fantastic talking to you. Really appreciate all the patient responses. And I'm sure the audience also would love to hear your views on the topics we discussed. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on a podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.